Hi there, and welcome to this episode of RYOBI Tool Talk. My name's Steve Ryder, I'm one of the trainers here at RYOBI.
And I'm Jules, the brand manager for RYOBI.
And on this episode, we're going to cover off cordless drills and everything that you need to know to get the most out of yours.
Cool. And if you guys have got any questions along the way, make sure you type them in and we'll be answering them live tonight.
And remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Stupid answers are plenty, we've got heaps of those, but please ask anything you want along the way. So with cordless drills, there's so many out there to choose from, and they're such a versatile product and one of the most popular cordless tools that you can purchase, simply because of the versatility of what they can do. Obviously, you can put your you can drill your holes and put your screws in with them, but you can also use hole saws, you can use sanding discs, you can use grinding discs, you can even get little cordless drill pumps as well that you can use a drill on. So they're incredibly versatile. But along with that, and along with their simplicity, sometimes the simple things can cause issues. So I'm going to go through everything you need to know about cordless drills and even try to solve some of those issues that you may have from time to time. So let's start with our standard cordless drill. And there are two main different types out there on the market. You've got a cordless drill driver and a cordless hammer drill driver. And we'll sort of cover off the main differences for those later. And depending on what sort of drill you're after, you're going to choose from one of those sort of two. Now, when it comes to the drill, we're going to start from the front and we're just going to work our way through to make it nice and easy. Now, at the front, you've got your chuck. Now, most cordless drills, at least all the ones in our RYOBI range, are what we call a 13mm chuck. Now, that means when I open the chuck all the way, it can accept a 13mm size bit in there. Now, a lot of drill bits, even though this is a larger drill bit, has a reduced shank on it, so that's okay. But when you go to things like a hole saw, which has a much larger shank on it, then you're going to need to have a much larger chuck to accept that. So it's always worthwhile going for a chuck that's a larger one. Now, when it comes to doing these things up, you don't need to be Superman. I mean, look at that, I'm not Superman, and I can tighten these up quite comfortably.
I reckon you do all right.
Oh, I don't know about that. You're being too kind, you're too kind. So when I do these up, just a nice, and that's it. You just need a nice little grab, you don't need anything more than that. If you're finding the chuck is starting to come loose while you're using it, chances are you just need to give it a little bit more. Okay, so it's as simple as that to get your bits in and out. And it's the same for any type of accessory you put on. But there's one little thing I want to share with you guys. Now, you're not going to be able to see it through the camera, it might be a bit hard, but the chuck is actually held on by a screw. There's a little screw right in the middle here that then attaches the chuck onto the drill. Now, a lot of people, when they put their drill bits in, I'll grab that one there, they'll just drop it in. And you can hear that, I'll put it up to my mic, you can hear that little tink. And what's happening is the back of the drill bit is actually hitting the head of that screw. Now, what ends up happening over time is if you keep allowing that to happen, that screw will work itself loose. So if I tighten him up, as I then use the drill, the head of that, or the top of that drill bit is actually hitting the head of the screw and it works itself loose. And then the result of that will be that you can't actually close the chuck on the drill anymore, okay? Now, there is a fix to this and it's quite simple. All you have to do is screw the head or screw the screw back in. But here's the trick. The screw that holds this chuck on is a reverse thread.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times people will try to do it up by doing it up the right way, but it's actually the wrong way. So to do that little screw up, you actually have to undo it. So going anti-clockwise, yeah, that's right.
Lefty loosey, righty tighty.
Yeah, that's the one. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. That's a good thing to remember. So always make sure that you do it up in reverse, and that will get that screw back in there.
Yeah.
So if you have that issue with the chuck not closing, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the problem. And it's very easy to happen. It's happened on one of my drills a few years ago, and it took me 2 seconds to fix.
Yeah. And make sure if you are tightening that screw, guys, you're taking the battery out before you try and
actually, good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
First.
Safety first. Take this out before you do any work. You don't want to be accidentally squeezing the trigger with a screwdriver down in the throat of the chuck there. So safety first is always paramount, guys. So that's about it for the chuck. That's pretty straightforward.
Hey, Stevie, we had a question come in
Sure.
around chucks, and this is from Tasha. Are there any chucks that will go down to 1/6 of an inch or take smaller drill bits?
That's actually a good question. Tash, was it?
Yes,
Yes,
Tasha.
Tasha. It's a good question. When you close up the chuck, you've got 3 teeth and there's a very, very small gap in there. And you will find that most chucks will only go down to about 1 mil, maybe about there. So anything under 1 millimetre won't fit in a standard drill like this. I'm sure there might be some out there, but it's very uncommon. The reason for it is your 1 mil bits are so thin that they break instantly. And if you're going to drill with a great big drill like this, or I shouldn't say great big drill, but a bigger drill like this, it's going to be very easy to snap those drill bits. There is a trick around it. You can use the old masking tape trick. I have done this before in the past, not for this, what I've got here, but you can actually tape masking tape around the shank of your drill bit and then put that in there. Now, it's not going to spin very true, so it depends on how accurate you want it to be. So, good question, Tasha, but I would not recommend a standard cordless drill for drill bits that are under 1.5 millimetre. Anything above, you're good as gold. Okay, so yeah, good question. Now, when it comes to other parts of the cordless drill, you come to something else called the clutch ring. Now, this is something that gets confused with the speed control sometimes. And people hear it clicking. They, oh, what does that do? Well, it's got all these numbers on there. What do the numbers mean? Well, what it is, and the best way to describe it, is this is a depth setting device for putting screws in. That's it. That's all it's used for. It's not used for removing screws. It's not used for drilling holes. It's purely designed so that you can get all your screws at the exact same height no matter what you do. A really good application for this is decking. You actually did a deck, didn't you, Jules?
Yeah, so doing one recently, it was a Murbury decking, and just to make sure that with any kind of repetitive driving task, having that torque setting kind of predefined, you know, really helps make sure that all the screws remain flush every time. So you just don't need to rely on your finger and pull the trigger to make it go into the depth that you need.
And this is a bit of trial and error to start with. So I've just got a block of pine here and I've secured it quite firmly, so it's not going to go anywhere. And if I'm going to something like Murbu in the deck, that's going to be very, very hard as well. And the last thing you want is to split a very expensive piece of Murbu decking. So using this clutch setting, I can actually adjust how high the screw is going to be when I let go of the trigger. So I'm first of all going to do it with no clutch setting at all. I hope you can see there's a little drill setting on this one. All right, so I'm going to grab a screw and I'm just going to line him up straight down. All right, bye-bye screw. Screw's gone. All right, no clutch setting. It only stopped because I let go of the trigger. Now, if I rotate this ring, let's go all the way down to, say, setting number 4. Alrighty, so this has got, I think, 24 settings off the top of my head. We're going to go down to setting number 4. Now you're going to hear a funny sound. Have a listen. Okay, hear that? Now what that is that's the clutch engaging inside the motor. Now you'll notice that the screw here is now proud of the timber, so it's sitting high. Now I don't want that. Imagine if I was doing a deck and all my screws ended up being at this high. That's not very good. So what I'm going to do is rotate it. Let's go 12. We'll go 3 times the strength more, or maybe 1 more. Alrighty. And what this has done is it's made the clutch is going to disengage when more force is put upon it, and hopefully we'll end up with a nice flush screw, like so. Now here's the best part. I can now put every screw in thereafter, and it will sit exactly flush every time, like so. Now one thing that I've done that I've completely forgotten about is put on the safety specs. I know, it's terrible. No. Even though we're only putting screws, guys, in, safety first, because you just never know, all right? So apologies on that one. But the advantage of this clutch mechanism is now all of these 3 screws are perfectly flush with the timber. I don't need to think about it any further. I don't need to control the trigger as I'm putting the screw in, and I can adjust it to material. Now we mentioned the deck, which is a really common thing to use this mechanism for, but also putting plaster sheet up as well. The last thing you want to do when you're putting plaster sheet up is drive the screw all the way through the plaster. So you have a bit of a test bit first, make sure you get your clutch at the right setting, and then you're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
A hidden bit's usually a better part to start with too.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly right. And with these sort of settings here, this is a mechanical clutch, so you can hear it clicking around, and when it engages, you can hear that that ratcheting noise. Now, some drills, like our one here, has an electronic clutch mechanism. Now, this is even better because what this does is it's controlled electronically, because this is what we call a brushless drill, and this is a brushed unit. Now, the main difference between the two when you're talking about brushed and brushless is brushless gives you more runtime, a lot more reliability, and a lot more grunt, a lot more power. But the other advantage is everything is electronically controlled. So this will do the same task. It will set the sort of the height of the screw, but it does it electronically. So I'm just going to set this to, I don't know, where have I got that set on to 7, okay? Have no idea where this screw is going to stop. So this is our test, if you will. And there, it's now flashed, and you can see the screws not quite flush. So I would then readjust this to the right height and keep going. But the thing I actually want to show you with this, which is really cool, is sometimes you might be doing a job and you've only got one drill, and you're going to be going from putting screws in to drilling a hole. So with this unit, I have to then flick this switch over to the drill setting. So now I don't have the clutch engaged at all, and I can go and drill a few holes here and there. But what happens when I want to come back and put these screws in? Oh, what was that setting on? Was that, Jules?
I think it was a 7, 6?
7, you sure?
Oh,
I can't remember. I don't know. But watch this, guys. As I rotate that, starts to flash, and it is, you were right on number 7. So it tells me where I was prior. But that only happens if you haven't removed the battery. As soon as you remove the battery from this tool, it resets that system. Right, but it's a really cool feature, so you never forget where you were, and you can go back to your job putting your screws in back at the right height again. So a really cool feature on those, being a brushless drill there.
Just on that one, Stevie, you know, talking about brushless drills,
yeah.
we get asked a lot of the time, you know, what's the difference between a brush and a brushless drill, and what does it actually deliver in terms of performance?
It's one of those things, I guess, Jules, where you definitely get more power, more runtime, a lot more reliability. It's just a better built tool, but it's an electronically controlled system. So you can program the tool to do what you want it to do. It has its own microprocessor, it has its own firmware, and you can make that product be programmed to suit certain requirements. And that's something you can't really do with brushed motors. Brushed motors are still fantastic, there's nothing wrong with them. They do a great job at a great price. Brushless is a little bit more money, just a little bit, not a lot nowadays, but it's well worth it, especially for the extra performance you get out of the tool. Yeah. So hopefully we might cover off a little bit more about brushed and brushless in more detail, maybe in a future episode. But that's the basics of it, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, guys, it gives you longer run time. It'll also give you longer motor life, and it'll also give you more power in your tool as well. Steve and I were talking before about a new brushless line trimmer I've got at home, and it's an absolute beast. So it just really does give you that kind of performance boost, like you'll see in the brushless models of our drills as well.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to point out too, because you said a line trimmer.
Yeah.
So this is that part of our 1+ system, guys. So this one battery fits over how many tools? Over 100?
Over 100.
Over 100 tools this battery will go into, including power tools, cordless drills, plus power garden. We've got sprayers for your weeds, we've got inflators, we've got all this stuff here. Yeah. You name it, away you go. So well worth the investment, guys, well worth it. And the brushless, especially in your power garden gear, is going to do a great job. Yeah. Now, the other thing I want to point out when we come back to the cordless drill is another feature on the top here. So we've covered off our clutch ring. We know how that works. That's a depth setting device for your screws. But what about this one on up the top here? It's almost always represented by a 1 and a 2. Now, there's a little bit of confusion here. A lot of people think that it's a speed setting. And yes, it does alter the speed of the drill, but it's not a speed setting, it's a gear setting. So if I'm in gear number 1, it means the drill is going to spin a bit slower, but I'm going to get a lot more twisting force. Now, whenever you buy a cordless drill, that twisting force is represented in what's called Newton meters. So I might come and buy this drill here, and on the outside of the box it'll say that's 40 Newton meters, let's say. And then this one here says that it's 60 Newton meters. That simply means that this drill has more twisting force to drive larger screws, drill larger holes. It has more grunt, more power, more force. alrighty? And when we're putting screws in, and it can be anything from just a normal little 45 Phillips head up to a bugle head screw or a roofing screw, something like that, you want the turning force, the twisting force, to be able to push that screw through the timber. So that's why we go into gear number 1 pretty much well for any time we put a screw in. Doesn't matter if it's a small screw or a larger screw. If I'm drilling a hole, however, something that's cutting, then I need a bit of speed. So that's when I go to gear number 2, all right? So in gear number 2, nice and fast. Gear number 1, slower, all right? And I access more Newton meters. Now, to actually show you that, I'm going, oh.
It's kind of like a car, a manual car.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely like a car. I can't drive a manual car. Never learnt. So yeah, it's we're two peas in a pod, the old manual car story. But it is the same theory. So I'm going to put the screw in the right way to start with. So I've got it in gear number 1. Just move him to the side, and I'm going to drive him in. And I'm just actually going to take the clutch ring off, just back to drill, just to show you what's going on here. So you'll notice nice and slow. But watch what happens if I put it into gear number 2 and I try and do the same thing. Alrighty. Alright, it's just gone in way too fast. Now, if you add speed to something, you add less control.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds weird, adding less control, but I think you know what I mean. It's harder to control if you have more speed. So always when you're putting your screws in, gear number 1, both for the speed and for the ability to drive your larger screws. Now, one other thing that's worth remembering too is we get asked quite a lot through our forums about how to stop the burring of heads of screws. Yeah. So, you know, you're driving a standard screw in and you might hear a weird noise like this. Actually, I'll use the screw that's on here. Some of you may have heard this sort of a noise before. That rattly sort of noise. All right, now
really
that's
pleasant, that one.
Yeah, it's not very good, and it's very common. And what will end up happening is the screw will end up burring out and wearing out, but also your screwdriver bit will wear out as well. Because what's happening is you're not actually driving the screw at all. You're just turning the screwdriver bit in the head of the screw, destroying it. Now, there's 3 simple steps to stop that from happening. You need to go in slow, you need to go in straight, and you need to go in strong. So SSS, slow, straight, and strong. Simple, you said it before, was it simple, straight, strong?
Oh,
I've lost it.
no.
Simply, slow, straight, and strong. There you go, 4 S's. So as long as you remember that, slow, straight, strong, you can't go wrong. Oh, I'm on fire there.
Oh,
how good's that?
Goodness.
Now, I'm going to explain what I mean by that, because if one of those 3 things isn't happening, then you will end up having a result of a burnt out screw. So let's just say, for instance, I'm just going to start with another screw here.
So actually, Steve,
Yeah.
before you move on,
Yes.
what does burring out a screw mean?
Okay, so
It means you can't get it back out again, hey?
Yeah, it means that you're destroying the head of the screw, you're destroying the bit, and it means the screw's stuck in there.
Yep.
And can be very hard to get out. And actually, before I do this, here's a good little tip, a great tip I was shown years and years and years ago. If you do end up with a burred screw, it sometimes might not be something that you've done. It might be something that you've had to, you know, a kitchen you're pulling out, and someone someone else has done it. The old humble rubber band is fantastic. All you do, I had a pair of scissors floating around before, but you chop the rubber band and you just have hang on, let's see if I can break. I'm not going to be able to break it, am I? Oh yes, look at that, super strength right there.
Yeah,
so break the rubber band. And if you've got a screw like this with a burred out head, simply lay the rubber band across, line that up, and in there you go. All right. Now, when you do that, just cut. You don't need a full length. You only need about an inch worth of rubber band. And what that does is it actually almost, I don't know what you do. It grips the screwdriver bit back into the head of the screw, so you can remove burred out screws if you're really desperate. The best thing is just to avoid it altogether. Well, that's the way I look at it. Prevention's better than cure. Yes.
Yeah, but sometimes you can't always.
Sometimes, yes. Someone else has done it. You know. So slow, straight, and strong. Let's go back to that, guys. So glasses back on. Let's just say I'm putting in a screw and I'm not going in straight. So I'm going to do this directly to camera so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to start it there, and you can see that that drill is in perfect line with the screw. As soon as I alter it, just by a little bit, even like that, that's not good.
Not a good
Alrighty.
result.
Now another thing you'll notice is when I was driving that, I'm standing back here. Right? I wasn't as close as what I was before. I don't know if you noticed that. Now that means that all my strength is over here. It's not near the drill. All your strength comes from your shoulders, your upper body. So if I'm in this position, I don't have any strength over the drill. That's the strength you need. You need strength to be able to push onto the drill to keep that screwdriver bit locked into the head of the screw.
So you're using a body weight effectively.
That's exactly what you're doing. I had to put up some laundry cabinets at home a couple of weekends ago, and I did this myself. I had to reach with my left hand, which I'm a right-handed person, and I had to sort of reach in like that up there, and it was horrendous. The screw was burred, it went in on an angle, and it was completely stuffed. Because I didn't have any strength, I couldn't get in there very straight. I was going slow, but
Yeah.
remember, I only had one out of the two, so it all went to crap, unfortunately.
And that's when you had to get out with the angle grinder?
Yes, I did actually.
Yeah.
I had to get the angle grinder and grind that screw back so it's flush. No one will know. Lick of paint, it'll come up fine.
That's a good excuse to get a new tool anyway.
You can never have too many tools, Jules, I can tell you that much. So, slow, straight, strong. So that was no strength, and that was not going in straight. What about the speed? I sort of showed you that a little bit before. We need to be in first gear, not second gear. If you happen to find yourself in second gear and you're driving in a screw, you're too fast, you're going in off on an angle. You know, look at that, it was vibrating the whole table, alrighty? So, slow, straight, strong. You'll get your screws in every time without any fail at all. And like anything, it's about practice making things perfect. So if you've never used a cordless drill before, you're just not familiar with one, practice on a bit of, blank timber or something you've got lying around the house. Have a go first. Get familiar with it and use the simple principles that we've told you about tonight, and hopefully you'll be fine and a professional in no time at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to other tools, I mentioned at the start about hammer drills and drill drivers. So I'm not going to go into the hammer drill side of things too much, because we're probably going to do a specialised episode just on rotary hammer drills and hammer drills. But the main difference is that these units, these two here, are designed for drilling into concrete and masonry materials. So that is concrete, cement, bricks, pavers,
Stone.
yeah, stone, all that sort of stuff. You're going to use a hammer drill, because what that does is that makes the chuck move backwards and forwards at a very high rate. And you have to remember that you need to use specialised bits when you are doing that, especially when you're going into your concrete and brickwork. You need to use a masonry bit. And the way you can tell the difference, just get rid of my rubber band there, is on the masonry bit, you've got like a chisel tip on the top. That's a bit of tungsten carbide, very, very hard. And on your standard steel/timber drill bit, that's not there. Okay, this is designed for cutting, this is designed for smashing. Alrighty. So, if you're wondering which type is best to go for, it really boils down to what you need to do. There is a slight price difference there, but the other thing you get when you spend that extra money is more power, more grunt, so that more torque, but also that ability to drill into brickwork if you need to. Yep. I had to put up a light switch at home on the outside where I'm building my pergola, which has been in construction now for about the past 12 months, probably longer. Still hasn't been finished. But I had to put a couple of screws in the brickwork, and I had to use a hammer drill to do that. And if I didn't have one of these, I would have found it quite difficult to do. So you do have an advantage with these sort of units. And generally, it's very easy to tell if one is a hammer drill or if one isn't, because there'll always be a little hammer symbol on the top here. So right now I'm setting into a screw mode. So if I want to put screws in, I go there. If I want to go into hammer mode, it goes here. And I'm just going to show you the difference, because not a lot of people sort of understand this. If I put it into normal drill mode, can't hear anything. I'm pushing down on it, yeah, can't hear anything. But what if I go to hammer mode? Have a listen now. All right, it's vibrating and everything, because what's happening is the chuck is going bang, 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 backwards and forwards. And that's what aids these sort of drill bits in drilling into the concrete. It's not actually drilling a hole when you go under concrete drills, you're actually hammering a hole out.
Yeah, you're chipping away at it really.
Yeah.
And ultimately these units just give you a bit more versatility, so it gives you the option to do a lot of different things around the home. So think of these ones as more of like your all-rounder.
Yeah, and the good thing too, Jules, is these aren't really that expensive. They're incredibly well priced for what they are. The other advantage you get, I mentioned, is the fact that you can get more power out of these, more turning force, that higher Newton meter rating. So that means drill bits like this, or this is actually an auger, means I can throw one of these in here. Let's get that out of the way. And this isn't too bad, it's a fairly decent sized bit. Okay, and I also want to show you what happens if you're in the wrong gear as well. So I'm just going to get my specs, throw those back on. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm in drill mode. So I'm going to put that into the drill mode there, or maybe not. Turn him off that. There we go. Pipe him into drill mode, and I'm also going to make sure I'm in gear number 2. So that's the fast gear, all right? So you'd think that's where I need to be because I've got a drill bit. And as I said before, the drill bit cuts and you need to have a lot of speed when you're doing your cutting. So let's just see what happens when I do that. Alrighty, so I'm going to line my drill up. Hopefully I'm nice and straight. Now the drill stopped. Now notice I've still got my finger on the trigger and the little light flashed and it's completely stopped. Now watch what happens if I release the trigger and keep going. Stops again. Now what's actually happening, guys, is there is technology in the battery that helps protect the motor from having any damage caused to it when this sort of thing happens. Because in this gear, in second gear, I'm actually asking the drill to perform a too heavy a task for it. So I put it into first gear, and actually what I'll do, I'll even start from the start again. I'll take it out. Oh, it's a bit of a squeaky noise. I'll put it back into gear number 1 where I should be. Now watch what happens. Line him up. Alrighty.
And that squeaking as well, you were telling me before, you can put a bit of grease or
a bit of wax on there. That's happening because this is a brand new auger. Once you've done a few holes, hopefully the squeaking will go away. But you saw then that in the lower gear, it went through not a problem. It went through slower, but it got the job done. And that's one thing you have to take note of if you're using something like a spade bit or a different style of auger, or especially hole saws as well. Even though they are cutting, you might have to change it up and go, all right, well, I know I'm cutting something, but I'm asking the drill to cut a larger hole, so I need to go into the lower gear, not so much the faster gear. So you put all that together, guys, and you can end up with a drill that's incredibly versatile and can do pretty much anything you want it to do. Obviously within reason. And just putting a couple of those little practices, that we've shown you into your job, should see you do things a lot easier and with a lot more care as well. A last thing you want to do, and I've seen this happen myself as well, people are putting screws in and they slip off, and I've done it once or twice where I've gone straight into my finger because I haven't been holding the screw properly and I haven't been paying attention. It happens, guys. So you just need to be careful, take your time, go slow. And be aware of what's happening around you. And if you put these little tips into practice, you'll do fine every time.
Yeah, and make sure you don't touch the screws. You've just taken them out as well, because they can be pretty hot.
I learned
that the hard way.
We were doing that before. We were putting some screws in, and they can get very, very hot. Yeah. Guys, I think that's about it for this episode.
Got a couple of questions come through,
sure.
Stevie. Mainly on, not necessarily on drills, but on some other products. Somebody's asked around battery life.
Yes.
And they're lithium-ion batteries, but they've noticed after some use the lifetime or the runtime is starting to diminish.
Okay. We will definitely do a full episode on lithium battery care a little bit in the future, but to give you a rough idea, lithium batteries are very, very well built, especially the 1+ batteries have been out in the market for many, many years. It's the oldest battery style platform in the world, basically been around for over 22 years. So having that platform for so long means we've been able to integrate a lot of advantages in there and protective measures. So to protect your battery and get the best out of it, for instance, if you want to store your battery for a long period of time, it's best to store it at about 80% charge. So on this battery here, hopefully this shows up, but this one's showing up as 4 lights, okay? Now, if this battery was down to 4 lights, that's the optimal point for it to be stored for a long period of time. Yep. Lithium just likes to be slightly undercharged when it's being stored. Also, the more you use it, actually the better off it is. It doesn't mean you just use it every day for the sake of it, but if I use my drill today and then put it on charge and then I come back and use it in another 2 years' time, well, it's not going to be all that good. It's very similar to what will happen with your car battery. It needs to be used to keep the chemical going.
But yeah, we'll definitely do an episode to address some of these questions around batteries as well, because
absolutely,
we've got the OnePlus platform, which has over 100 tools, and they all work off the same battery, so they're a pretty important part of the system, and we know there's a lot of them out there and a lot of you guys with them out there too. So we'll bring that to you in the next little while as well. We also had a question come through around a table saw and cutting straight with a table saw. We will do also an episode on saws too coming up. That's probably one of the next few cabs off the rank.
Yes.
So we'll definitely get to that one, Nina, but we'll come back to you in the comments after this as well on that.
And please remember, guys, this isn't the only time, the only forum you can ask us questions. Please, we have our own Facebook page. You can even call a Bunnings store and have a chat with them, and they can put you onto a rep if need be, or even onto myself. At the end of the day, we want to make sure you get the best information possible. Yep. Something like saws is we've just got to set it up straight, and we can cover that off in a future episode. So please feel free to ask us questions at any time with anything you need help with.
Cool. Yeah, thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. We'll be bringing to you these episodes every fortnight from now on. So if you've got any kind of questions coming through, please do shoot them through. Where we see volumes of questions, we'll tailor episodes around them as well. And remember, if you've got any questions around any of our products, pop into Bunnings Warehouse. That's where they're all available, the OnePlus range, as well as some of our 36-volt petrol and corded tools as well. And one of their team members will be able to assist you. And hopefully, if you run into one of ours, we'll definitely be able to assist you as well. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thanks,
Thank you,
Stevie.
Jules. Cheers.
See you guys.
All. Bye.